The story began with the complete destruction of the Hill clan. Their castle was covered in blood and black demonic flames, while corpses filled every hallway. In the middle of that massacre stood one man alone. Lavis Vindica, the feared prince of the Vindica bloodline. The final survivor of the Hill clan crawled across the ground while coughing blood, and asked if Lavis truly believed he could escape. After killing everyone there, Lavis looked down at him coldly, before asking if he seriously thought he came there, without knowing all the crimes the Hill clan had committed. According to him, this was never a massacre. It was simply an execution. The survivor's eyes widened in horror, before Lavis burned him alive with black flames, completely exterminating the Hill bloodline. However, wiping out one of the noble clans of the demon realm created massive consequences. Soon after, Lavis was dragged before the throne of the demon king himself, Gamadir Vindica, who was also his father. While the 12 Black Thrones silently watched from the sides, Gamadir demanded to know how Lavis dared to massacre an entire clan without permission. He explained that Lavis had disturbed the order of the demon realm and acted like a foolish executioner instead of an investigator, but Levi showed no fear at all. He argued that the Hilt clan had committed endless crimes, while everyone ignored them. He mocked the nobles for pretending to uphold justice, while allowing corruption to spread throughout the demon realm. Gamadir calmly replied that there were strict laws governing executions, and that Lavis had no right to act based on his own judgment. Levi's laughed in response, and claimed that the demon realm had always been ruled by darkness, consuming weaker darkness. According to him, survival was the only true law demons followed. He also believed the Hill clan planned to seize the throne eventually, and insisted that exterminating them was necessary for the survival of the Vindica bloodline itself. He even reminded Gamadir that he was originally sent there as an investigator, because nobody else dared oppose the Hill clan. Despite everything Leva said, Gamadir remained silent for a long moment, before finally announcing that the judgment had already been decided. Together with the 12 Black Thrones, Levi's was sentenced to exile in the human world for violating the laws of the demon realm and annihilating the Hill clan. For the first time, Levi's completely lost his composure. His eyes widened in disbelief, as he demanded to know if his father was truly serious. Gamadir explained that Levi's would live among humans, with his powers sealed, and learn the true dignity of the Vindica bloodline there. Lavis furiously argued that he had only destroyed the Hill clan's bodies, and not their souls, meaning they could still reincarnate eventually. But nobody listened to him anymore. The 12 Black Thrones surrounded Lavis, and activated ancient magic circles. Chains of black flames wrapped around his body, as he screamed in rage and cursed everyone around him. He repeatedly shouted that he had done nothing wrong, and refused to accept the punishment. One of the Black Thrones, named Bambai, mocked him before burning half his face with demonic flames, and sarcastically wishing him a pleasant stay in the human world. Moments later, the flames completely engulfed Lavis, and his body disappeared from the demon realm forever. The rules of exile were absolute. He had to live inside the body he was given in the human world. He was forbidden from killing humans or taking his own life. If he broke either rule, his soul would be destroyed permanently. Lavis suddenly woke up inside a small room, and immediately jumped out of bed, while gasping for air. Although the pain from the flames was gone, something felt terribly wrong. He looked down at his trembling hands, and realized they were far too weak and fragile. He angrily slapped himself in the face, while trying to process what had happened. He couldn't believe he had truly been exiled to the human world. He also swore that the first thing he would do, after returning to the demon realm, was rip off Bombi's horns personally. The moment he stood up, his legs nearly collapsed beneath him. His entire body ached terribly, and even breathing felt uncomfortable. Lavis looked around in disgust, because the human world lacked sulfur and demonic energy completely. While he was still trying to understand the situation, the bedroom door suddenly opened and a young girl rushed inside. The moment she saw him standing, tears filled her eyes, and she immediately hugged him tightly, while crying from happiness. She said she thought he would never wake up again. Lavis froze in confusion because he had no idea who she was. Soon after, a woman entered the room as well and tearfully called him Miho, revealing the name of the human whose body he now occupied. Lavis silently realized these people were probably Miho's family. While he stood there awkwardly, another man entered the room. Unlike the others, his expression was cold and emotionless. He stared directly at Lavis, before telling him to come to his senses quickly, and return to school tomorrow, because he had already spent an entire week unconscious in bed. Miho's mother tried defending him by saying he was still too weak, but the man immediately shut her down before leaving the room. Strangely, Lavis actually smiled after seeing him, because for the first time since arriving in the human world, someone reminded him of a demon. The man's cold and oppressive aura felt strangely familiar to him. The next morning, Lavis went to school while Miho's sister worriedly dropped him off. Lavis looked around the building in disgust, and thought that even in the demon realm, schools had always been miserable places. He sat quietly in the classroom, while planning how to eventually return to the demon realm and inherit the throne, before the Vindica bloodline fell apart without him. But his thoughts were interrupted when two male classmates approached him from behind. One of them casually placed a hand on his shoulder, and mockingly asked whether he brought the money he owed them. The moment the bully touched him, Miho's memories suddenly flooded into Lavis's mind. He witnessed endless scenes of bullying and humiliation. Miho had constantly been beaten, mocked and extorted by these classmates, while silently enduring everything alone. Lavis finally understood why the body hurt so badly. Before he could react, one of the boys smacked him on the back of the head, and mocked him for becoming even more pathetic after his coma. The bully then demanded that Miho quickly pay his friendship fee. For the first time in his entire existence, someone weak enough to be considered an insect had dared to strike him. Lavis suddenly recalled one of his lessons from the Demon Academy. During class, the young demons were being taught about humans, and why they were considered inferior creatures. One demon loudly exclaimed that humans looked disgusting, like weak invertebrates crawling on the ground. Another confidently claimed that humans probably smelled terrible too. Teacher Cynthia calmly nodded and agreed with every word. According to her, humans were infinitely vulgar beings, who constantly hid their weakness behind lies, emotions, and hypocrisy. She also mocked them for worshipping both demons and angels, despite understanding neither side. Back then, Lavis himself had coldly declared that such pathetic creatures should simply be burned alive. Cynthia smiled proudly at his answer and told him that if he ever encountered a human, he should crush them immediately without hesitation. Remembering those lessons now only filled him with even greater rage. A mere human had dared to put his hands on him. Lavis clenched his fists tightly, before suddenly grabbing Taiwu by the hair, and smashing his face directly into the desk. Taiwu screamed in pain and cursed at him, while desperately trying to pull away. But Lavis only looked at him with disgust, while thinking that humans truly were stupid creatures. The moment Taewu's friend Seongjun saw this, he immediately rushed toward Lavis, while shouting that Miho must have completely lost his mind. As Seongjun swung his fist toward him, Lavis instantly noticed something strange. His sealed demonic power slightly reacted to the hostility directed at him. He effortlessly dodged Seongchun's attack, and calmly wondered if human aggression somehow stimulated magic. Curious about this discovery, he decided to test it further. Lavis threw a punch directly into Seongchun's face, with overwhelming force, sending him flying straight into a row of lockers. The entire classroom fell silent in shock. Lavis slowly looked down at his own hand in confusion. According to the rules of exile, his demonic abilities should have been completely sealed in the human world, yet his magic clearly reacted whenever violence or aggression appeared around him. While he was still thinking about this strange phenomenon, one of his classmates named Shin nervously called out to him, and asked if he was really the same Miho they knew. Before Lavis could answer, Taiwu grabbed a chair and charged at him in revenge. Another student shouted a warning, but Lavis reacted instantly. He turned around and kicked Taiwu directly in the chest, with enough force to knock the breath out of him completely. Taiwu collapsed while gasping painfully for air, but Lavis calmly walked toward him without the slightest emotion. He repeated teacher Cynthia's words about humans becoming rude, to hide their weakness, and concluded that insults seemed to make them stronger somehow. As Taiwu struggled to stand, Lavis pulled back his leg and kicked him directly in the jaw, knocking him unconscious instantly. Both Taiwu and Songju now lay defeated on the floor, while the entire classroom stared at Miho in complete disbelief. Nobody could understand how the quiet and constantly bullied Miho had suddenly become this terrifying. Overnight, meanwhile, Lavis smirked proudly and mentally mocked his father. If this was what humans called lying low, then it was honestly pathetic. He then slowly looked around the classroom with an ominous smile, and asked if anyone else wanted to insult him too. The students immediately avoided eye contact in fear. Even Shin looked completely shocked, because he never imagined Miho was secretly this strong. After hesitating for a moment, Shin cautiously approached him and asked if he was okay. Levi stared at him silently before remembering that this human had actually tried to warn him earlier. Compared to the others, Shin seemed far more useful. Levi's quietly decided that perhaps this boy was suitable enough to become his servant in the future. With an eerie smile, he simply replied that everything was fine. By late afternoon, classes finally ended and the two of them left school together. Shin excitedly praised him the entire way, saying it was incredible how Miho defeated both bullies alone. He even jokingly asked if Lavis had secretly reincarnated from another world, like the heroes from webtoons and fantasy novels. Hearing the word reincarnation almost made Lavis panic for a moment, because he thought Shin had somehow discovered his true identity. Fortunately, Shin was simply obsessed with fantasy stories involving magic. While walking home, Lavis remembered a conversation he once had with his demon friend. Before exile back then, his friend warned him that demons absolutely could not kill humans in the human world, because doing so would result in complete soul destruction. Lavis had mocked the idea at the time, and argued that humans constantly killed each other anyway. His friend explained that humans were fragile creatures, protected by laws beyond demons themselves, and warned him never to underestimate those rules. But back then Lavis arrogantly replied that none of it mattered, because he never planned to visit the human world in the first place. Now fate had completely humiliated him. Lavis looked up at the evening sky and quietly wondered how he was supposed to silence annoying humans if killing them was forbidden. At that moment, Shifen suddenly admitted that he wished reincarnation actually existed, because he wanted to escape this miserable life, and wake up in another world someday. Lavis immediately sensed genuine pain hidden behind those words. Shifen awkwardly laughed, and admitted he already knew fantasies like that were impossible. But life had become difficult, enough to make him dream about escaping reality. Hearing this relieved Lavis slightly, because it confirmed that Shin still had no idea who he truly was. However, when Shin sincerely called him cool, Lavis physically shuddered in disgust. Receiving praise from a mere human felt deeply shameful to a proud demon noble like him. That night Lavis lay in bed, while thinking about the strange reaction his magic had shown earlier. A demon trapped inside a human body should not have been capable of using power at all, yet his magic clearly awakened whenever violence and aggression surrounded him. Slowly a confident smile spread across his face. Perhaps even exile could not completely suppress Lavis Vindica. But the moment he thought this, intense pain suddenly spread throughout his body. He immediately collapsed onto the bed, while realizing Miho's weak human body could barely withstand even traces of demonic power. He had only lived as a human for a single day, yet his body already felt tortured beyond belief. Despite that, exhaustion overtook him instantly and he fell asleep within seconds. The next day passed quietly, until classes finally ended again. Lavis and Shin left school together, while Shin happily said it felt nice, finally experiencing a peaceful school life for once. He gratefully admitted that nobody dared bother them anymore. Thanks to Manhwa, Lavis only snorted in disappointment, and honestly admitted he preferred when people fought him, because he still wanted to test his magical power further. Almost immediately after saying that, someone suddenly called out to them. Lavis turned around and saw Taiwu standing there, alongside several older students. Clearly he had called for backup after yesterday's humiliation. One of the older boys stepped forward, and coldly asked if Lavis was the one who touched his younger brother. According to him, they had spent all this time protecting Taiwu, while only asking for small payments in return. Yet Manhwa dared repay that kindness by beating him up. Shichuan immediately turned pale with fear, but Lavis looked genuinely excited instead. A huge smile spread across his face as he casually admitted that yes, he really did beat Taiwu. The older boy angrily ordered him to follow them. Soon they arrived at an abandoned construction site. Taiwu's older brother immediately scolded him for returning home, looking like a weak loser after getting beaten so badly. Taiwu nervously apologized while lowering his head in shame. After that, the older brother slowly turned toward Lavis and asked what exactly he should do with him. According to him, if he ignored this situation, he would become a terrible older brother who failed to protect his family. He then poked Lavis in the forehead and mockingly asked whether Miho's mother taught him to beat up his own friends. Lavis smirked coldly and calmly answered that perhaps she really did. The bully let out an irritated laugh before calling him insane. He immediately swung his fist toward Lavis's face in anger, but Lavis effortlessly caught his wrist midair. Lavis tightened his grip around the bully's wrist, until a loud crunch echoed through the construction site. The older boy screamed in pain, and desperately tried pulling his hand free, but Lavis's grip felt completely inhuman. Before anyone could react, Laves suddenly slammed his fist directly into the guy's face. Every punch carried terrifying force, as Laves remembered his mother from the demon realm. She was known among demons as the one who poisoned tongues themselves, the creator of curses and insults. According to her, violence chained the flesh while poisonous words corroded the soul. Humans desperately clung to both things, because they were weak creatures. Terrified of reality, Taiyu and the others panicked. After seeing their leader getting beaten down so easily, they shouted at each other to stop standing around, and quickly finished Miho off together. Hearing this only made Lavis smile wider. If hostility truly strengthened his demonic energy, then fighting multiple opponents at once was even better for him. His eyes flashed with excitement as he rushed straight toward the group. Every movement was precise and brutal. One punch shattered a nose, another sent someone collapsing to the ground instantly, and a single kick folded another bully in half. The construction site quickly turned into a complete massacre. Shaikon stood frozen in disbelief while watching the scene unfold. He could barely recognize the same Miho, who used to get beaten every single day. Now those same bullies were dropping one after another, without even being able to fight back properly. After several minutes, the fight finally ended. Or rather, the beating ended. All the bullies lay scattered across the ground groaning in pain, while Lavis stood alone in the center of the construction site. For the first time since arriving in the human world, he genuinely felt better suddenly. He understood why humans constantly resorted to violence and insults. His uncle in the demon realm had always claimed that violence was humanity's true gift, while his mother specialized in inventing curses and hateful words. Back then Lavis thought those ideas were pointless, but now he finally understood. Humans released their darkness through conflict, and somehow that darkness fed his own demonic power. Meanwhile, hidden nearby, a small rat silently observed everything. However, this was no ordinary rat. It was a lesser demon sent from the demon realm. Everything it witnessed was being transmitted directly to Lavis's uncle, Bark and Vindika. The demon calmly watched the scene through a magical bowl, while Lavis's demon friend stood beside him. With a smile on his face, he proudly explained that, instead of placing a stone of restriction into Lavis's body, during exile he secretly implanted a stone of demonic blood instead. He wanted to see how long Lavis could survive, while slowly regaining power in the human world. Farkin laughed in amusement, while admitting he was still shocked that Lavis truly exterminated the entire Hill clan alone. Levi's friend calmly replied that his nephew would never rest until he achieved what he believed was justice. According to him, nobody in existence could break Levi's Vindika's stubbornness. Farkin sighed and commented that Gamater truly was heartless for throwing his own son into the human world. Without hesitation, Lavis's friend only shrugged and said forceful subjugation was the only method that ever worked on someone like Lavis. After all, that philosophy itself came directly from the Demon King. According to Varkin, only criminals whose sins were considered too severe, even by demon standards, were exiled there. Lavis would eventually face true despair among humans. He then asked when that troublesome child managed to grow up enough to create chaos on this scale. Lavis's friend spread his hands over the bowl, while gathering more demonic energy into it. Countless lesser demons silently watched from the shadows as the magical image of Lavis flickered before them. Varkin smiled with anticipation and quietly wondered how long it would take before his nephew experienced true darkness. Lavis sat inside a small restaurant together with Shin. The two of them were eating extremely spicy tteokbokki, while Shin excitedly replayed the construction site fight. Over and over again, Lavis casually took another bite, before confidently asking if this weak spice was supposed to imitate hellfire. However, Shin stared at him nervously, because tears were literally streaming down Lavis's face. Lavis immediately claimed it was just sweat from his eyes, and stubbornly continued eating, despite the pain. According to him, a demon who ran away from hellfire was no demon at all. At that moment, Cheyenne phone suddenly rang. The name Jinji appeared on the screen and his face instantly turned pale. Lavis immediately noticed the fear in his expression and asked what was wrong, but Shin quickly stood up and claimed he had urgent business to handle. Even so, Lavis clearly noticed the trembling in his hands before Shin hurried away. Later that night, deep inside a hidden basement tattoo parlor, a man screamed in agony while being restrained. A dangerous-looking woman named Jinji calmly worked on his forehead with a tattoo machine, while warning him not to move unless he wanted more pain. According to her, all of this could have been avoided if he had simply returned the money he owed on time. Once she finished, she smiled proudly and revealed the word thief tattooed across his forehead. Her assistant then announced that Shine had arrived. The John nervously entered the room while trembling with fear. Jinji immediately demanded to know why he took so long. She grabbed his face and forced him to stare directly at the ruined man lying on the couch. According to her, the tattoo was a permanent mark for thieves who failed to repay debts. She then coldly asked how Shan's own assignment was progressing, and whether everything was still going according to plan. Without taking his eyes off the tattoo, Shan shakily answered that there had been some complications. The moment he said that, Jinji slapped him hard enough to knock him to the floor. She asked if he seriously believed this was all some kind of joke. Then she picked up the tattoo machine again. Her men grabbed Shane's arms and restrained him, while she pressed the buzzing needle close to his skin. Terrified, Shane begged her not to tattoo him too. Jinji calmly warned him that if he failed again, he would end up just like the man on the couch. After leaving the tattoo parlor, Shin returned home and sat in front of his computer in silence. His hands trembled above the keyboard, while he stared at a flash drive lying beside him. Whatever assignment Jinji forced him to complete was clearly dangerous. He repeatedly wondered whether he should continue at all, but fear eventually forced him to keep working. At the same time, Lavis was suffering in an entirely different way. He lay on his bed, while clutching his stomach and swinging his legs around in pain. The spicy food completely destroyed his body. His stomach burned so badly that he genuinely felt like he swallowed lava. Even his muscles ached from the earlier fight. Levi stared at the ceiling in frustration, while realizing Miho's body was unbelievably weak. He had only fought for a short time, yet his shoulders already felt like they were falling apart. But giving up was impossible for someone like Lavis Vindika. He suddenly removed his shirt and started doing push-ups in the middle of the night, while sweating heavily. According to him, no amount of pain could break the pride of the Vindika bloodline. If this human body was weak, then he would force it to become stronger, no matter what. The next morning, Shin arrived at school looking exhausted and nervous. He quietly stared at the flash drive in his hand, while remembering Jinji's threats from the previous night. His thoughts spiraled in fear, until someone suddenly placed a hand on his shoulder. Shin screamed in panic, before turning around and realizing it was only Lavis. Confused, Lavis asked why he was acting so terrified. For a brief moment, Shin considered asking Miho for help. After witnessing his strength yesterday, part of him believed Lavis might actually be capable of saving him, but he quickly rejected the idea. No matter how strong Miho suddenly became, getting involved with Jinji was far too dangerous. While Lavis tried figuring out what Shin was hiding, A strange girl suddenly walked past them in the hallway. The moment Lavis sensed her presence, his expression changed completely. There was something incredibly familiar about her scent. Before he could understand why, the girl suddenly collapsed face first onto the floor. As if she lost consciousness, Shion immediately rushed over in panic and carefully rolled her onto her side. The moment the girl opened her eyes, both boys froze. Levi's immediately sensed something terrifying hidden inside her, a demonic aura, but that was impossible. Humans were not supposed to possess demonic energy. A teacher quickly arrived after hearing the commotion and carried the unconscious girl toward the infirmary. As they passed by him, Lavis suddenly noticed a tattoo visible on the girl's arm. The Hilt clan crest. Lavis's eyes widened instantly. Why would a human girl carry the symbol of the clan he exterminated with his own hands? Without hesitation, he decided to investigate the mystery himself. That evening, Levis headed straight toward the hospital, where the strange girl had been taken earlier. The moment he arrived outside her room, a young policewoman guarding the entrance stopped him and politely explained that no visitors were allowed because the patient needed rest. She asked whether he was the girl's friend. Lavis slowly turned toward her and stared directly into her eyes. Even with only tiny fragments of magic available to him, he could still cast low-level demonic spells. A dark aura flickered through his gaze for a brief moment. Before the woman's eyes rolled backwards slightly, she quietly returned to her seat beside the door and completely stopped reacting to her surroundings. As if her consciousness had temporarily disappeared, Levis calmly opened the hospital room door. While thinking that even pathetic crumbs of magic were still useful, the girl immediately looked toward him with annoyance, after hearing the door close behind him, and demanded to know who he was. Lavis coldly replied by asking who she really was, instead confused. The girl started complaining about him entering without permission. Lavis suddenly grabbed her wrist and forcefully pulled her closer. The girl cried out in pain while trying to pull away, but Levi's ignored her completely. His attention remained fixed on the strange tattoo burned into her skin. He demanded to know how a lowly human dared carry the crest of the Hilt clan. The terrified girl insisted that he was speaking nonsense and claimed she knew nothing about demons or noble clans. Levi's tightened his grip slightly and warned her that if she wanted to avoid serious trouble, she needed to tell him the truth immediately. His terrifying gaze made her body tremble uncontrollably. For a brief second, she even thought she saw the silhouette of demonic horns behind him. Panicking, she nervously whispered the word demon beneath her breath. Lavis immediately ordered her to speak properly, which only made her more frightened. Finally, she admitted that she truly did not understand the meaning of the tattoo. According to her, a woman named Jinji told her that anyone wanting to join their group needed to receive the mark. Jinji also promised her special diet pills that would supposedly help her lose weight quickly. The moment Lavis heard this, his expression darkened. The scent coming from this girl felt deeply familiar to him. He had definitely encountered it somewhere before in the demon realm. Suddenly, old memories resurfaced inside his mind. Back when he was younger, Lavis once sneaked into a forbidden's underground tower alongside his demon friend. The deeper they descended into the darkness, the more nervous his friend became. He repeatedly warned Lavis that they were entering a restricted area and begged him to turn back before they got caught. But Lavis only smirked and mocked him for acting like a coward. Embarrassed, his friend angrily insisted that he was not scared. He simply did not want punishment from the elders. Lavis casually placed his hands behind his head and told him to leave alone then. But despite his fear, the other boy refused, because he knew Lavis would probably cause trouble. Without supervision, the two eventually reached the bottom floor. After descending for what felt like forever, a heavy silence filled the corridor, until Lavis suddenly stopped walking. He sensed something strange nearby. Ahead of them lay a massive underground chamber, and right in the center rested a body completely covered in flowers. Levi's friend instantly panicked and asked what the hell they were looking at, but Levi's boldly walked closer without hesitation. As they approached, they finally recognized the corpse. It was Jeremy Hilt, or at least what remained of him. Flowers were growing directly from his flesh, as if feeding on the corpse itself. Lavis crouched down curiously and reached toward one of the flowers, despite his friend desperately warning him not to touch anything. The moment Lavis ripped the flower out by its roots, a disgusting rotten stench filled the air. His friend hid behind him in fear while staring at the moving roots, squirming like living worms. Horrified, he realized they had discovered devouring flowers, forbidden's demonic parasites, capable of consuming bodies from the inside. Now, years later, Lavis realized the exact same sense surrounded the girl lying before him. In the hospital bed, the terrified girl begged him for help while trembling violently, but Lavis silently looked out the hospital window instead. Hanging upside down from a nearby tree branch was a black bat. Watching him carefully, Lavis immediately sensed that it was another demonic familiar, spying on him somewhere far away. Its owner quietly thought that they would meet soon enough. After leaving the hospital, Lavis headed directly toward Jinji's tattoo parlor. As he stood outside the basement entrance, countless thoughts raced through his mind. A human girl carrying the Hilt clan symbol, alongside the scent of devouring flowers, could not simply be coincidence. Meanwhile, several gang members walked through the underground basement. While discussing Shin, one of them wondered why their leader, Young Mo, cared so much about a random high school student. Another casually explained that Young Mo was not interested in Shin himself, but rather the mysterious app he created. One of the gang members then pulled out a strange blue candy and joked about how modern gangs even used advanced technology now. The others immediately recognized the candy and became nervous. They warned him to stop eating Blue Bao because it was a brand new product with dangerous side effects. Someone even mentioned what happened to the girl from yesterday. After taking it, however, the guy simply laughed and claimed he did not care, as long as the drug gave him a good time. At that exact moment, Lavis stepped out from around the corner. The smell instantly hit him. It was the same scent again. Demonic energy mixed with the Hilt clan mark. The gang members immediately stopped talking. After noticing him, Lavis calmly asked whether they also received their tattoos from Jinji. The man holding the blue candy laughed mockingly and asked if this random kid was one of her friends. Then he casually patted Lavis on the cheek, while telling him to show respect toward his elders. That single touch instantly irritated Lavis. Without hesitation, he smacked the man's hand away, before punching him directly in the face, hard enough to knock him unconscious. Immediately, the other gang members exploded in anger, and demanded to know who sent him there. But instead of answering, Lavis simply punched another one in the face, and sent him flying backward. A third attacker screamed curses while charging straight toward him, but Lavis effortlessly dodged the attack, and struck him with terrifying accuracy. The man collapsed to the floor screaming in agony. The last remaining thug immediately panicked, and pulled out a knife before lunging at Lavis. Lavis spun around and kicked him directly in the head, with enough force to drop him instantly. Then he calmly demanded to know where Jinji was hiding. Suddenly, the first man he punched slowly stood back up, but something was terribly wrong. His eyes bulged unnaturally from their sockets, while drool poured from his mouth. Like a wild animal, Lavis narrowed his eyes in surprise, because the demonic energy surrounding the man had become much stronger than before. The thug suddenly charged toward him like a rabid beast. Lavis quickly realized that the blue candy must have enhanced his physical abilities somehow. He tried stepping backward to avoid the attack, but accidentally tripped over someone lying on the floor, and lost his balance. The crazed man instantly jumped on top of him, and raised his fist to strike. For the first time since arriving in the human world, Lavis cursed nervously. Meanwhile, deep inside another hidden room beneath the city, Jinji nervously stood before the true leader of the organization. Young Mushi apologized, and admitted that Shin still had not finished preparing the app they needed. One of her men quickly stepped in and claimed they explained everything much more clearly this time, so the app would definitely be completed soon. Young Mu silently held his forehead in annoyance, and reminded them that they said the exact same thing last time too. Not only that, but someone had also been stealing their Blue Bao products recently. Beside Jinji, a naked man knelt on the floor in humiliation, while desperately begging for mercy. Tears streamed down his face, as he repeatedly swore he would never make another mistake again. Young Mo quietly stared at the blue flowers, resting inside a vase nearby. Before slowly taking one into his hand, he calmly walked toward the terrified thief. While the entire room fell silent, the man immediately realized what was about to happen. He shook his head hysterically and begged Young Mu to spare him. But Young Mu showed absolutely no emotion. In one swift motion, he drove the sharp flower stem directly into the man's eye socket. A single tear rolled down his cheek, as blood poured from the ruined eye. Even Jinji became visibly terrified at the brutal sight unfolding before her. The thief weakly begged for mercy again, but Young Mu ignored him completely. He drove another flower stem into the man's face, causing blood to splatter across the room, as agonized screams filled the air. Finally, the broken body collapsed onto the floor, twitching in unbearable pain. Young Mu calmly stated that there were no second chances. In his organization, he hoped everyone present understood that clearly. Then he slowly turned toward Jinji and asked whether he was correct. Nervously swallowing, Jinji immediately agreed with him. Young Mu coldly ordered her to stop making excuses and bring him the completed app, already unable to even look him in the eyes anymore. She quietly answered that she understood. The moment she left the room, Jinji immediately started calling Shane repeatedly. Her hands shook nervously, while she screamed that every second mattered. Now at the same time, Shine sat alone in front of his computer, desperately working while surrounded by endless lines of code. When his phone finally rang, he paused for a moment before picking it up, but the voice on the other end was not Jinji. It was Lavis. Lavis calmly explained that he originally wanted to investigate things himself, but the local gangsters refused to cooperate. Confused, Sheehan asked what exactly he was talking about. Lavis casually asked whether he knew Jinji. Hearing her name instantly made Sheehan panic. He demanded to know how Lavis discovered her. Lavis simply replied that he saw her name appear on Sheehan's phone earlier. Then he calmly asked whether Sheehan knew where she lived, because he needed to confirm something personally. Shi-chan immediately became even more nervous, and asked why Lavis was looking for her. Had those idiots really dragged him into this mess too? Lavis answered that nobody forced him. He went there by himself because he needed answers. He explained that he was currently standing inside Jinji's tattoo parlor, but she was nowhere to be found. While speaking on the phone, Lavis suddenly noticed a cat sitting strangely on the staircase nearby. The animal visibly flinched the moment he looked directly at it. Meanwhile, Shin hurriedly threw on a jacket and rushed toward the door of his apartment, while warning Lavis not to touch anything no matter what. Before Lavis could even respond, Shin abruptly hung up. Lavis slowly turned back toward the cat. The creature's behavior felt incredibly unnatural. It looked less like a real cat, and more like something pretending to be one. Curious, Lavis casually walked over. Before grabbing the cat by the scruff of its neck, he calmly asked whether it understood him. The cat nervously meowed while trembling violently, but Lavis coldly ordered it to answer properly. Completely terrified, the cat instantly started speaking in human language. Lavis immediately began interrogating it. First there was a rat watching him, then a bat, now a cat. The creature nervously admitted that she was an observer, sent from the demon realm. Her mission was to secretly monitor prisoners exiled to the human world. That was why she had been following him around this entire time. Lavis narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Her demonic aura felt unbelievably weak. He asked whether she was truly even a demon. The cat nervously asked how he noticed her so easily. Lavis casually pointed out that she stood out too much. Even now she was accidentally balancing on her hind legs like a human, instead of behaving like an actual cat. Lavis sighed, and realized questioning her further would probably waste time. Instead he activated a small amount of magic, and ordered the observer's true master to reveal himself. Through the connection, the cat's eyes immediately became blank. Far away in the demon realm, Lavis's demon friend smirked in amusement. After feeling the spell activate, he admitted he expected Lavis to figure things out eventually, but not this quickly. The moment his image appeared through the cat's body, Lavis irritably called him an idiot, and demanded to know whether this entire situation was his fault again. His friend casually asked why Lavis always acted so rude toward him. Despite their friendship, he also wondered what kind of chaos Lavis planned to create this time. However, Lavis instantly realized the demon was pretending not to know anything. Again, knowing there was no point arguing, he sighed heavily and instead asked why things in the human world were so different from what he remembered. Most importantly, how was he still able to use magic? According to the exile laws, prisoners should have their powers completely sealed. His friend calmly explained that exceptions existed everywhere, and assured him he would eventually understand everything himself. Levi's then immediately brought up the devouring flowers. Their scent filled the human world far too strongly. He already encountered those flowers once in the demon realm years ago, and they were considered forbidden even among demons. Hearing this, the demon friend's expression became more serious. He admitted that even officials in the demon realm already knew. Remnants of the Hilt clan somehow infiltrated the human world. Apparently the creatures created by the Hilt family proved far more persistent than anyone expected. Lavis irritably asked whether this entire mess truly was connected to the Hilt clan again. Did their influence still survive even after extermination? The demon only laughed quietly, before explaining that the human world was no longer the same place it once was. According to him, it had become a breeding ground for conspiracies and hidden corruption. In other words, Lavis arrived at the perfect time to get involved. Lavis immediately demanded more answers, but before he could continue, the connection suddenly broke. The cat regained consciousness and nervously looked up at him again, while Lavis clicked his tongue in annoyance. Meanwhile, Jinji continued repeatedly calling Sean without success. Furious and panicked, she screamed that he was finished if he kept ignoring her. Eventually she dialed another number instead. The person who answered was Sean Jun, who was currently hanging around the computer club. Jinji immediately ordered him to gather people and head toward the office, because they were going to catch Shine personally. At the same time, Lavis looked back toward the cat, and realized that if she truly worked as an observer, then she should possess detailed knowledge about the human world. The cat proudly confirmed that searching for prisoners across the human world was her specialty. Lavis then ordered her to reveal her true form. The observer looked shocked for a moment. Lavis threateningly asked whether he should force her instead. Terrified, she quickly obeyed. The cat pressed her paws together as light engulfed her body. Moments later, a small demoness emerged from the flash, with nervous eyes and a timid smile. Levi's glanced at her once, before bluntly remarking that she looked incredibly weak still. Since his demon friend personally sent her, she probably had some use. He asked for her name. The demoness quietly lowered her head, and admitted she did not have one. Without hesitation, Lavis immediately named her street, since he literally found her wandering around outside. Surprisingly, the demoness became extremely happy after receiving a name for the first time, and enthusiastically thanked him. Lavis then ordered Street to explain everything she knew about the human world. Meanwhile, Shin sprinted desperately through the streets, while praying he could reach Lavis before disaster happened. As he ran, painful memories resurfaced in his mind. Back when he won an app development competition, he felt happier than ever because all his hard work finally paid off. but the celebration ended almost immediately, after suspicious men suddenly approached him outside the building. Jinji recognized him instantly and laughed. After hearing the winner's prize money was only a pathetic amount, she casually ordered her men to drag him into a car. Shin screamed while being forced inside. There he finally met Youngmook for the first time. Youngmook calmly pointed toward a seat stacked with 50 million, won in cash, and offered to buy Cheyenne app. But Shin refused immediately, because the app was never meant to be sold. Hearing this answer caused Youngnu to pause quietly, before saying that Cheyenne's response was exactly what he expected. Those words terrified Sean even more than the money itself. Now as he desperately rushed through the streets, trying to protect Lavis from becoming involved, he suddenly crashed into a massive figure standing in his path. Quickly apologizing, Shin looked up and froze. It was Songjun. Songjun smirked coldly and admitted they did not even need to search for him anymore, because he walked right into them himself. Xian slowly looked around and saw Jinji approaching, nearby with several gang members. Her expression burned with rage. After kidnapping Xian, Jinji dragged him deep into an underground basement and threw him inside a locked computer room. She coldly explained that his only job now was to sit there and monitor the app properly. Shin desperately tried asking her to wait and listen to him, but Jinji immediately cut him off. She warned him that they were watching his every move from outside the room, so he should not even think about trying anything clever. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind her. Helm slowly realized that his life was completely ruined. Meanwhile, Jinji and Seongjun watched him through the observation window outside. Seongjun skeptically asked whether Helm was really some genius developer, because honestly, he looked painfully slow while working. Jinji explained that according to Youngmu, the Blue Bao business could not properly function without Cheyenne's program. Seongjun looked confused and asked whether the app was really called I'm Here. In his opinion, the name sounded unbelievably stupid. Inside the room, one of the gang members shoved Shin into a chair and smacked the back of his head, ordering him to hurry up and work. Shin shakily launched the application. Judging from the logo and design, the app looked like a normal platform for making friends and dating nearby users. However, Youngmu suddenly entered the room and calmly explained the real purpose behind it. According to him, Cheyenne's app was the core of their entire Blue Bao operation. First, they would collect massive amounts of customer data through the app. After that, controlling the market would become easy. The app's location sharing feature would allow them to expand Blue Bao distribution everywhere without effort. Seongjun excitedly declared that they would finally be able to sell Blue Bao on a massive scale. Youngmu silently looked down at one of the blue candies resting in his hand and agreed. Soon they would spread their product across the entire world. The next day, the app exploded in popularity. Almost instantly, students everywhere rushed to download it, because the company promised 30,000 won cash back for every friend invited through referrals. Easy money attracted people like flies. Some students even pressured or threatened others into registering. On top of that, everyone who joined received a free diet supplement called Blue Bao as a welcome gift. The app proudly claimed the product was fully certified and safe. Of course, that was a complete lie. As evening arrived, Youngmu's subordinates celebrated their success enthusiastically. Jinji proudly checked the growing registration numbers on her phone, while Seongjun admitted Youngmu truly understood business perfectly. However, Jinji quickly remembered the destruction of her tattoo parlor and angrily asked whether they still had not found the idiot responsible. One of the gang members awkwardly explained that the security cameras showed something strange. There was a bat blocking the camera. Jinji frowned in confusion and personally reviewed the footage herself. Sure enough, a bat stared directly into the camera lens, the entire time perfectly covering the view. On another camera, a rat appeared instead. Jinji cursed in frustration, because the situation made absolutely no sense. At that moment, Songjun received a message and immediately informed her that the newest shipment of Blue Bao had arrived. Meanwhile, Lovis walked home from school together with Street. Along the way, he noticed her awkwardly trying to crawl through a tiny hole in a wall, while stuck halfway inside. Embarrassed, Street immediately apologized and returned to her humanoid form, while nervously admitting she might have gained a little weight recently. Lavis then asked about the investigation he assigned her yesterday, instantly becoming proud of herself. Street explained that after a difficult search, she finally uncovered important information about Blue Bao yesterday. Lavis suspected the candy smelled similar to devouring flowers. According to Street's investigation, he was correct. Devouring flowers only bloom after consuming a living host, making their existence nearly impossible without organic material. The species itself was supposedly extinct even in the demon realm, so the biggest question remained: how did humans obtain them? Street explained that Blue Bao was secretly distributed under the disguise of diet, supplements, and health products. However, the manufacturing process remained heavily hidden, making it difficult even for demons to trace the exact ingredients. Levi's irritably asked whether that meant she learned absolutely nothing useful. Panicking, Street quickly defended herself and insisted that was not true at all. Blue Bao had become incredibly popular recently, meaning huge amounts of the product were circulating everywhere. If they followed the traces of demonic energy left behind by the candy, they could eventually locate the source. Lavis immediately poked her forehead in annoyance and said, she should have taken him there from the start. Street nervously admitted that Lavis's demon friend ordered her to wait for him first. Hearing that instantly irritated Lavis, he narrowed his eyes and demanded to know whether she had been reporting every single one of his actions back to Bambi this entire time. Street apologized repeatedly and explained she was only a lesser demon, forced to obey both of them. Lavis then gave her a choice, right there and then, who was her true master, him or Bambi. Street froze nervously, because choosing sides between higher demons was terrifying, but Lavis calmly promised that if she chose him, he would personally elevate her beyond being a weak, lesser demon forever. Hearing that, Street immediately transformed into a proud, noble-like posture, before kneeling respectfully and swearing absolute loyalty to Lavis. Vindica satisfied, Lavis smirked and accepted her oath by placing his hand over her head. The moment his demonic magic touched her, Bambi instantly lost his connection to Street completely. Somewhere far away in the demon realm, Bambi angrily realized Lavis stole his observer right out from under him. Meanwhile, Levi's victoriously told him to stay out of his business from now on. That same night, Levi's and Street followed the demonic energy trail directly toward the source of Blue Bow. Eventually, they arrived at a massive warehouse filled with shipping containers. Street nervously explained that the concentration of demonic energy there was overwhelming. Levi's decided to open one of the containers immediately, but Street pointed out that every container was tightly sealed, with chains and locks. Levi's solved the problem the simplest way possible. He punched straight through the chains, shattering them instantly. The moment the container doors opened, an unbearable rotten stench exploded outward. Inside were countless boxes packed tightly together, each radiating disgusting demonic energy. Street nervously asked whether all of it was Blue Bow. Looking around, they realized dozens of similar containers surrounded them. Seeing the horrifying amount instantly reminded Lavis of an old memory from the demon realm. Back then, he once fought against his uncle Varkin near a massive cliffside. During the battle, Varkin mocked Lavis for being arrogant, despite still acting like a weak child. Lavis furiously cursed at him in response, but his uncle simply laughed and declared that if Lavis refused to behave properly, he might as well die. Varkin struck him with overwhelming force and launched him straight off the cliff. As Lavis fell into the endless abyss, he screamed curses at his uncle, while Varkin laughed and asked whether this pathetic death was truly how the great Lavis Vindica planned to end his life eventually. Lavis crashed violently at the bottom while groaning in pain. Moments later, Varkin landed nearby too, still mocking him, but suddenly, his uncle stopped speaking after noticing something nearby. Lavis followed his gaze and froze. Before them lay a massive pile of demon corpses, completely devoured by flowers. The bodies were twisted and hollow, while grotesque flowers bloomed directly from inside their flesh. Varkin sighed heavily and quietly remarked that they finally discovered where the creatures had been hiding all along. Looking at the horrifying scene now in the warehouse, Lavis remembered the ancient history behind the devouring flowers. Long ago, when light and darkness separated into opposing forces, creatures unable to fully belong to either side were born between them, from the remains of fallen celestials and torn demons. A mysterious flower bloomed at the dawn of creation itself, a flower whose only desire was destruction. It devoured flesh endlessly and sought the collapse of worlds. Back then, Lavis and Varkin personally burned every corpse and every flower they found. At the bottom of that abyss, Levi's was certain they exterminated everything completely. Even Street explained that the overlord of the demon realm supposedly searched through the entire world afterward to wipe out every remaining trace. So why were there suddenly so many appearing again? Lavis quietly explained that devouring flowers originally came from the human world itself. Unlike heaven or the demon realm, the human world existed in the middle, where light and darkness mixed together into unstable chaos. It belonged fully to neither side, making it the perfect place for corruption to spread. According to ancient human legends, humanity supposedly exterminated the flowers thousands of years ago, but clearly that story was false. And if the flowers were simultaneously appearing in both the demon realm and the human world again, then someone somewhere was intentionally bringing them back. The moment Lavis and Street opened the warehouse container, a bright flashlight suddenly shone directly onto them from behind. Both of them immediately turned around. One of the gang members narrowed his eyes and said he had been wondering who was making noise around the containers this late at night. But after taking a closer look at Lavis, his expression instantly changed. Excitedly, he shouted for Jinji and announced that the idiot from the tattoo parlor had shown up again. Street immediately recognized the woman standing nearby and quietly informed Lavis that she was Jinji herself. Jinji frowned in irritation and demanded to know who the hell he really was. First he trashed her tattoo shop, and now he somehow tracked them all the way here. Levi's ignored her anger completely and instead calmly asked whether she was the one running this entire operation. Jinji proudly admitted that she was, and sarcastically asked what exactly he planned to do about it. Levi's glanced toward the containers filled with blue bow, and asked whether she even understood what that disgusting product was made from. Jinji simply smirked, and asked if he was trying to steal their business secrets. Lava sighed, and admitted that he honestly did not care about human business. He only felt strangely uncomfortable leaving something like this alone. Hearing that, Jinji immediately turned toward her men, and angrily asked whether they planned to screw things up again. She reminded them that they all knew exactly what Youngmu would do if they failed. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out several blue bao candies, before tossing them toward the gang members. Like rewards, their faces immediately lit up with excitement. They eagerly asked whether the product was really free. This time Jinji coldly ordered them to shut up and eat, as the men greedily devoured the candies. Levis quietly told Street to stay hidden because she would only get in his way during the fight. Within seconds, the blue bow started affecting the gang members. Their eyes became bloodshot. Their bodies twitched unnaturally. Jinji pointed directly at Lavis, and ordered them to kill him immediately. The men dropped the candy wrappers and charged toward him. Like rabid animals, Lavis simply called them idiots. Humans truly were arrogant creatures. They consumed unknown substances without hesitation, and never realized the danger until it was already too late. The amount of demonic energy concentrated inside the warehouse was enormous now, and Lavis could feel his own power reacting more violently than ever before. One of the attackers lunged toward him with a knife, but Lavis effortlessly dodged the strike and countered with a punch to the face. Another attacker immediately rushed in and kicked him from the side. Lavis quickly dealt with him, too, before charging another man, dodging his punch and smashing his fist upward into the guy's chin, with enough force to send him flying backward. But this time things were different. The blue bat users were much stronger than before. One attacker suddenly grabbed Lavis from behind, while another tackled him violently onto the ground. Lavis cursed in irritation, as the huge guy among them drove his knee directly into his stomach. The others instantly piled onto him, while laughing madly and punching him repeatedly from every direction. Hidden nearby, Street watched nervously, while Jinji enjoyed the entire spectacle with a satisfied smile. Even Lavis himself realized the enemies were physically stronger now. Apparently, consuming larger quantities of blue bao significantly enhanced them, while defending himself from the relentless attacks. An idea suddenly crossed his mind. Lavis quickly twisted his body toward the open container nearby. Before punching one of the stacked boxes apart, he grabbed a bag filled with blue powder and violently burst it open, directly into the attackers' faces. The men instantly started choking and coughing uncontrollably. At the same time, Lovis accidentally inhaled some of the powder himself. The disgusting rotten smell nearly made him sick. But something unexpected happened. The massive concentration of evil and corrupted, demonic energy surrounding the powder caused his sealed magic to react even more aggressively than before. By the time the attackers recovered enough to continue fighting, Lavis had already changed completely. He rushed at them with terrifying speed. One man collapsed instantly, after receiving a brutal punch directly to the face. Levis then dodged another attacker, grabbed his leg and slammed him violently into the ground, before stomping directly onto his knee, and completely destroying the joint. The largest gang member roared and charged toward him next, but Levis reacted instantly. He kicked the giant in the stomach, moved behind him in one motion, grabbed both shoulders and slammed the massive man onto his back, hard enough to shake the ground itself. Jinji stared at the scene in complete shock. How was one high school student defeating all of them alone? Then Lavis slowly stood up and looked directly at her. The moment she met his piercing eyes, fear completely overtook her. For the first time in years, Jinji genuinely felt like she was staring at something inhuman. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a ballet competition had just begun. A talented young dancer named Yora gracefully performed on stage, while her mother Kang Hanyo proudly watched from home through a television broadcast. Hanyo happily declared that with talent like this, her daughter would definitely enter the famous Venus ballet troupe someday. Suddenly, Youngmu entered the room alongside one of his assistants. Hanyo immediately exploded in anger, and demanded to know how they dared enter her house. Without permission, Youngmu calmly placed a jar filled with blue bow candies onto the table, and explained that because she ordered such a large amount, they decided to deliver it personally. Hanju nervously stared at the jar, before asking whether these were really the same candies from before. Youngmu casually assured her that there was nothing to worry about, since they personally controlled every stage of production and distribution. But Hanyo still looked uneasy. Youngmu smirked and asked whether she was only becoming worried now, after already feeding huge amounts of the product to her own daughter. At that exact moment, Yora continued performing on stage. Under the effects of blue bao, her movements became unnaturally fast and precise. She spun endlessly while performing impossible tricks, one after another. However, as the performance continued, something clearly started going wrong. Drool slowly dripped from her mouth. Her eyes rolled backward. Her body trembled violently. You calmly commented that Hanju probably rushed things too quickly, and asked how many candies she fed her daughter. Suddenly Yura froze awkwardly in the middle of a spin. Hanju panicked and screamed for her daughter to stop, as if the girl could somehow hear her through the television. Then a horrifying cracking sound echoed across the stage. Yura's leg twisted unnaturally, before her entire body collapsed onto the floor motionless. The audience immediately erupted into terrified screams. While security rushed onto the stage, Hanju burst into tears and hysterically blamed Youngmoo for promising there would be no side effects. Youngmoo calmly corrected her. There were no side effects, as long as the dosage was controlled properly. Unfortunately, her daughter no longer had any hope of recovery without continued use of Blue Bao. He explained that now Yura's body would depend on the product. Until the very end, Hanyo stared fearfully at the candy jar, while Youngmoo continued, explaining that addiction was already unavoidable. Before he could finish speaking, Hanyo screamed loudly while clutching her head in despair. Then Youngmoo's phone suddenly rang. It was Jinji. He casually answered the video call and asked what she wanted. But instead of Jinji, Lavis suddenly appeared in front of the camera and calmly asked whether Youngmoo was the one producing Blue Bao. Youngmoo's eyes widened instantly. The call ended immediately afterward. Youngmoo gave Hanju one final, gloomy glance before apologizing and saying, urgent business had appeared. Back at the warehouse, Street nervously asked Lavis why humans willingly consumed such dangerous garbage in the first place. Lavis casually answered that humans were stupid and arrogant creatures. They always believed addiction could never happen to them personally. Since they lacked anything meaningful to truly believe in, they desperately clung to pathetic things, like drugs and illusions instead. Suddenly Street noticed movement behind him. She quickly pointed deeper into the forest. At the same time, Jinji excitedly called out for Youngmoo. Youngmoo himself stepped out from the darkness, alongside several armed men. Calmly, he asked whether destroying the tattoo parlor was also Lavis's doing. Lavis immediately replied that he did not care about the tattoo shop at all. What interested him was where Youngmoo obtained the devouring flowers. According to Lavis, a pathetic little human should never have been capable of acquiring something like that. Hearing the words little human caused Youngmoo's expression to change slightly. He quietly wondered whether Lavis truly was someone similar to himself. Back when he was younger, he lived with a father, completely addicted to every kind of drug imaginable. One night, Youngmoo returned home, desperately craving more substances, and called out to his father repeatedly, demanding another dose, but his father never answered. Annoyed, Youngmoo kicked the body lying on the floor. The corpse rolled over, its lifeless eyes stared blankly upward. Youngmoo cursed angrily, and realized the old man died while consuming garbage his entire life. Furious, he repeatedly kicked the corpse, while screaming that now there would be nobody left to provide him with more drugs. Then suddenly the corpse's eyes lit up. Youngmoo instantly froze in fear. Slowly the dead body started rising back to its feet, but it was no longer his father. Something else had taken over the corpse entirely. The being calmly asked whether his father's death saddened him. Youngmoo stared silently for a moment, before admitting that he honestly did not care at all. In fact, he felt relieved that the useless old man finally died. The only thing Youngmoo truly cared about was obtaining more of that substance. Hearing this answer seemed to satisfy the creature. The demon handed him the strange flower, and instructed him to feed his father's corpse to it. According to the demon, doing so would form a contract between them, and grant Youngmoo everything he desired. However, if anyone ever betrayed the devouring flower or rejected its influence, then Youngmoo must kill them personally. The contract itself would protect him. Youngmoo silently stared at the flower for several moments. Then a twisted smile slowly spread across his face. Without hesitation, he stabbed the flower directly into his father's corpse. Youngmoo stared directly at Levi's before quietly asking whether he really thought he was just a pathetic little human. Lavis immediately realized from his tone that this man possessed some kind of hidden trump card. Youngmoo calmly confirmed it himself, and declared that the creature he served granted him an entirely new life. The moment he said that, Lavis immediately understood everything. This idiot had formed a contract with a demon. Lavis flexed his wrist while sighing in irritation, and admitted that, honestly, did not care what kind of nonsense belief Youngmoo followed still. He almost felt sorry that both he and that demon ended up becoming this pathetic together. Hearing those words instantly enraged Youngmoo. Veins bulged across his face as he screamed, demanding to know how Lavis dared insult him like that. He immediately ordered all his remaining men to capture the brat alive. Meanwhile, Street quietly ran farther away, because she knew interfering would only hinder her master during battle. At this point, Lavis was genuinely getting annoyed. These constant fights with drugged-up humans were becoming exhausting, so he decided to finish everything quickly. Meanwhile, across the city, ambulances rushed Yura toward the hospital, while her terrified mother cried helplessly beside her. At the same time, students all over the country continued meeting with couriers to receive Blue Bao shipments. Ever since the app launched, orders exploded beyond control. Blue Bao spread through schools like wildfire. Songjun excitedly declared that soon They would have VIP clients across the entire country. One of the gang members even asked whether this meant they were about to become a global corporation. Apparently, Young Mo already established roots into China and Japan too. Everyone praised him like some kind of genius businessman. Meanwhile, trapped inside the basement computer room, Shin silently monitored the app's expansion while drowning in guilt. Every passing second caused more people to fall victim to Blue Bao, and desperately prayed for someone to finally stop it all. Back at the warehouse, Lavis had already finished dealing with most of Young Moon's men. Jingyi stared at him in disbelief and admitted, this monster was definitely not a normal high school student. Maybe he belonged to some rival organization instead. Lavis looked genuinely confused by her words, because human gang rivalries meant absolutely nothing to him. At that moment, Young Mu suddenly attacked. Lavis reacted instantly and blocked his hand mid-strike, but unlike the other addicts, Young Mu moved on an entirely different level. Every attack came fast and precise. Lavis defended himself while noticing the overwhelming, demonic energy surrounding his opponent. Young Mo furiously demanded to know how Lavis could possibly block his attacks. Had he received the blessing too? Because according to Young Mu, Lord Beaver should belong to him alone. Hearing that name caused Lavis's eyes to narrow. Now he understood completely. The devouring flowers, the disgusting stench, the demonic corruption. The god Young Mu worshipped was none other than Beaver Hilt himself. Young Mu looked shocked that Lavis recognized the name, but Lavis only laughed mockingly, and declared that out of every possible demon in existence, nobody in their right mind would ever worship an insignificant coward. Like Beaver Hilt, those words instantly drove Young Mu insane with rage. He screamed at Lavis to stop insulting the one who saved him. Lavis smirked coldly and asked how pathetic Beaver must look now, hiding like a rat. After abandoning the Hilt clan during the extermination, Young Mu furiously ordered him to shut up, because he was unworthy of even speaking Lord Beaver's name. His attacks immediately became more violent and chaotic. While blocking the strikes, Lavis remembered the day he annihilated the Hilt bloodline. Out of everyone there, only Beaver escaped alive by fleeing like a coward, and now that same coward somehow gathered worshippers inside the human world. Lavis quietly wondered where exactly that rat was hiding now. Young Mu completely lost control. He suddenly leaned forward and growled violently. An unbearable rotten stench exploded outward. Lavis instantly covered his nose in disgust. Then Young Mu tackled him directly to the ground, while screaming that anyone insulting Lord Beaver would die. Personally at his hands, he grabbed Lavis by the head, slammed his knee into his stomach repeatedly, then pinned him flat against the ground. Before raining down punch after punch, Lavis gritted his teeth while desperately blocking the attacks. Young Mu roared that both Blue Bao and Lord Beauvoir belonged entirely to him alone. At this point, Lavis realized the demonic energy completely destroyed this idiot's sanity. Young Mu truly intended to kill him. Watching from hiding, Street became increasingly worried, because Miho's human body had already reached its physical limit. If this were the demon realm and Lavis possessed his true power, he would have destroyed Young Mu instantly. But inside a fragile human body, even moving became dangerous. Far away in the demon realm, Barkin and Bambi continued observing the battle. Through magic, Bambi commented that the devouring flower test subjects seemed to have fully merged with Young Mu. Even with the demon bloodstone implanted inside him, Lavis remained trapped inside a human body. At this rate, he might genuinely die there. And if Lavis died before his exile ended, his soul would face complete destruction forever. But Varkin only smiled calmly. Then he asked Bandy whether he knew what Lavis hated most in the entire world. Bandy answered that choosing only one thing was difficult, because Lavis hated almost everything. His personality was unbelievably terrible. Varkin sighed and quietly admitted that the boy resembled him more than anyone realized. Then he finally explained the answer. Lavis hated filth more than anything else. He suffered from extreme mysophobia and could not tolerate dirt, rot, or disgusting smells at that exact moment. Lavis suddenly stopped Young Mui's fist midair. His entire body trembled with fury. He quietly muttered that everything there was filthy. Young Mu looked confused by his reaction, but Lavis suddenly exploded with rage, and screamed that he absolutely hated this disgusting smell coming from him. Something instantly changed. Lavis clenched his fist so tightly that his arm trembled violently. Young Mu instinctively stepped backward in fear. Slowly, Lavis stood back up while staring at his own left hand. Even though only a tiny fraction awakened, the strength flowing through that arm finally felt like it truly belonged to Lavis Vindica. Again, Young Mu became too terrified to approach him anymore. Meanwhile, Lavis calmly declared that he no longer wished to touch such a filthy body any longer, so he would end everything quickly. The next second, Lavis vanished from sight. He appeared directly in front of Young Mu and punched him in the face so hard that his head snapped backward. Violently, Young Mu staggered in shock, while wondering where this insane strength suddenly came from. Street watched excitedly as her master completely overwhelmed the enemy. Now Lovis coldly told him again that he was not human, Then he punched Youngmu a second time, with enough force to launch him several meters backward. Junji screamed in terror, while Youngmu desperately stood again, and demanded to know who Lavis truly was. Lavis instantly appeared before him once more. He ordered Youngmu to stop speaking with that filthy mouth, before smashing another punch directly into him, and launching him high into the air. Even Ban became shocked while watching the battle. Barking calmly explained that when the devouring flower subject released that overwhelming stench, it likely overstimulated Lavis's misophobia. Because of that part of his sealed demonic instincts awakened, although only fragments of his true power returned, it was enough for him to temporarily surpass the limitations of Milo's human body. Bambi still could not believe it. Even with the demon bloodstone, using authentic demonic power inside a sinner's human body should have been impossible, but Varkan only smiled proudly, and reminded him that Lavis Vindica was never ordinary. No matter what happened, that monster was still his nephew. Back at the warehouse, Levi smashed Youngmu through several stacks of blue bow boxes, before calmly telling him to consider himself lucky. The truth was simple in this body. Lavis could not kill him. Youngmu stared in disbelief. According to him, someone personally blessed by Lord Beaver should never lose like this. Then suddenly, he noticed the nearby blue bow powder and realized something. A twisted smile spread across his face, as he reached toward another box, but before he could touch it, Lavis instantly grabbed his wrist, and warned him not to do something so stupid. According to Lavis, he would beat him half to death long before allowing that. Then Lavis adjusted his stance. He grabbed his own left wrist tightly with his right hand, to stabilize the overwhelming force building inside it, and charged. Youngmu could only stand frozen in horror. The next moment, Levi's unleashed a devastating punch directly into his face, while amplifying the impact using his other arm. The explosion of force sent Youngmu flying backward, head first into a container full of blue bow boxes. Then everything became silent. Young Murray's body no longer moved. Lavis slowly pulled out a handkerchief and covered his nose, while muttering that the disgusting stench finally faded a little. Meanwhile, deep inside the basement control room, she stared at the app statistics with trembling hands. Every second the numbers kept rising faster and faster. Watching it all happen made him feel sick. This was never what he wanted to shy on. School was always a place where everything felt fake. From the very beginning, relationships formed inside a confined space, where survival mattered more than honesty. Students pretended to like people they secretly hated. Others bullied weaker classmates, simply to avoid becoming targets themselves. Everyone wore masks to survive. That was exactly why he created the app. He only wanted people who genuinely needed each other to connect. Honestly, he wanted lonely people to find real friendships. He never created it to help distribute poison. Finally, Shin made up his mind. His expression hardened with determination, as he forcefully crashed the servers himself. Instantly, alarms began appearing across every connected device. Outside the room, Song Jun and the others stared in confusion, after suddenly seeing massive server errors appear on their screens. Realizing what was happening, Sean quickly stood up, grabbed a chair and jammed it beneath the door handle so nobody could enter. The gang members immediately started banging violently against both the door and the windows, while screaming at him to open up. Ignoring them completely, Shin rushed back toward the computer and started deleting the app itself. Outside, Song Jun panicked and ordered everyone to break into the room immediately. Seconds later, a loud crash echoed through the basement, as Song Yeon smashed the window using a chair before climbing inside, together with several others. The moment they entered, one of the men punched Cho Ji-hai directly in the face, while screaming in rage and demanding to know what he was doing. As Soo-jeon struggled on the floor, the others rushed toward the computer and realized he truly crashed the servers. Panic immediately spread across their faces. Song Jun screamed at them to stop the deletion process immediately. If Youngmu discovered this happened, he would kill every single one of them. Unfortunately, none of the idiots understood how to stop the program. Meanwhile, Sean desperately endured the beating, while thinking about only one thing: he had to hold out until the app was completely deleted no matter what. Suddenly, Sean grabbed a sharp shard of broken glass from the floor and slashed one of the men across the leg, while the others stumbled backward in shock. He quickly got up and ran toward the other side of the room. There he grabbed a fire extinguisher and turned toward them, while shouting that this was his app. Then he unleashed the extinguisher directly into the room. White dust instantly exploded everywhere, filling the air and completely blocking everyone's vision, while Shizen used the confusion to buy himself more time. And finally, the abduction completed successfully. For a brief second, Shin looked toward the monitor in relief. That moment of distraction cost him immediately. Song Jun suddenly tackled him from behind, grabbed him by the throat and slammed him violently onto the floor. Furious beyond reason, he screamed at the others to find something and tie this idiot up immediately. But because of the fire extinguisher dust, nobody could properly see anything. Meanwhile, Sung Jun tightened both hands around Sean's throat. Sean desperately clawed at his arm while his vision slowly darkened. Was this really all he could do? Was this where everything ended? Then suddenly a cold voice echoed through the room behind them. How dare he touch my servant? Seong-jun froze instantly. The next moment a horrifying scream filled the basement. The other gang members nervously turned toward the sound. As the dust slowly settled, they saw Lavis grabbing Seong-jun by the hair, while smashing his face repeatedly into the ground. Panicking, the others rushed toward their friend, but Lavis immediately charged at them instead. One punch dropped the first attacker instantly. Another strike knocked the second one flat onto the floor. Lavis coldly demanded to know who exactly they thought they were touching. According to him, he would rather die than allow someone else to take what belonged to him. Hechin stared up at him in shock. Suddenly old memories resurfaced in his mind. Back when he first showed the app to Miho, he nervously explained how it worked. Through location sharing and interest boards, people nearby could gather, communicate, and even form study groups together. Miho looked genuinely impressed, and asked whether Shin really created something that amazing himself. Then Miho pointed toward a strange red button inside the app, and asked what it did back then. Shin awkwardly looked away before admitting the truth. The last time Taiwu's gang dragged Miho away, Shin desperately wanted to help, but could not figure out where they took him. He felt powerless and guilty afterward. That was why he created the emergency SOS function. If someone pressed that button, only trusted friends would receive the location signal immediately. That way, even if something terrible happened again, Shin promised he would definitely come save him somehow, whether through the police or by gathering friends. He swore Miho would never stay alone again. Back then Miho smiled softly and thanked him, before promising to download the app for sure. Now, tears filled Shine's eyes as he weakly held up his phone toward Lavis, and asked whether he truly came because of the SOS signal. H-on immediately realized that Lavis really did receive it. Unable to stop himself anymore, Shin burst into tears, while thanking him repeatedly for coming to save him. Outside the basement meanwhile, Street struggled to hold Jinji in place, while waiting for Lavis to finish inside. Or at least she tried to hold her. Jinji constantly struggled and yelled at her to let go already, but the moment Lavis finally emerged from the basement, Street became distracted for a second. That tiny opening was enough. Jinji instantly broke free and tried escaping. Street immediately prepared to chase after her, but Lavis calmly ordered her to let the woman go, because she no longer mattered to him anymore. He quietly looked up toward the night sky, while thinking that at least all the devouring flowers hidden there had finally been destroyed. In the distance the warehouse burned violently, while police officers and firefighters rushed to the scene. Emergency vehicles surrounded the entire area, while officers tried figuring out what exactly happened there. One detective named Park Yoon-han carefully looked around the burning site, before noticing unconscious gang members scattered everywhere. Near the trees meanwhile, Lavis calmly headed home together with Cheyenne and Street. Che-chan occasionally glanced towards Street in confusion, because this strange girl walking beside them felt suspicious, no matter how he looked at it. At the same time Lavis finally realized something important. His uncle Varkan and Bambi had manipulated him from the very beginning. The moment he eventually returned to the demon realm, he would definitely get revenge for this humiliation. Shichul nervously asked whether Lavis truly did not need to visit a hospital. After everything that happened, Lavis simply answered that hospitals sounded troublesome and lazy. Hearing that somehow made Shichun laugh weakly despite everything. Then Shine quietly admitted something. He only pressed the SOS button just in case. He never actually expected Lavis to come. Levi immediately looked confused and asked what exactly he meant by that. Before Shin could answer, Street suddenly burst into laughter while covering her mouth. She teased Levi's by reminding him what he said earlier, when interrogating Jinji. This road leads to their hideout, right? Otherwise she end up like the others. Street pointed out that none of that sounded accidental at all. Meanwhile Jinji herself remembered those exact words too. She originally assumed Lavis went that far, because Xian was his close friend. But when Lavis previously acted confused, after hearing Xian was kidnapped, she realized something strange. If not friendship, then why did he go so far to save him? Lavis glanced towards Xian's phone again, and noticed the blinking SOS signal on the screen. Quietly Street whispered that Lavis could stop pretending already, whether he admitted it or not. Shin now viewed him as a hero who came to rescue him personally. Then Shin finally noticed something else. He pointed towards Street and awkwardly asked who exactly she was supposed to be. Lavis casually answered that she was simply his subordinate, named Street. Hearing the word subordinate instantly made Shin panic internally. Suddenly everything made terrible sense in his head. Miho suddenly becoming overwhelmingly strong. A suspicious girl following him everywhere. Brutal fights with gangsters. Mysterious behavior. Sejin's eyes widened in horror, as he convinced himself that Miho definitely joined some kind of dangerous gang. Meanwhile Lavis calmly thought that eventually, countless enemies would target his servant anyway. There was no point hiding the truth forever, so he finally decided to reveal it. With complete confidence, Lavis proudly declared that he was none other than Lavis Vindica, the son of the great demon king, who descended from the demon realm itself. Achan stared at him blankly, then asked again in complete confusion who. Lavis frowned slightly before explaining that, now that Shine knew the truth, he would naturally have to assist him with future matters too. Chandra continued staring silently for several seconds, then suddenly screamed in panic, because something soft landed on his lap. Street had transformed back into her cat form, and was now rubbing affectionately against him. Completely exhausted, Lavis casually told Street to explain everything herself, because he was too tired after fighting all day. Street happily agreed and told Sean to listen carefully. John stared at the talking cat in absolute terror. Then his eyes rolled backward and he lost consciousness on the spot. After a long silence that the police had already taken everyone away, and were heading toward the station. First hearing this, Youngmu lowered his head while grinding his teeth in frustration. Nearby Detective Cha suddenly turned around after noticing movement, and demanded to know who was there. Unauthorized personnel were not allowed near the scene. But before he could react further, a tall man wearing a dark robe calmly ordered him to stay quiet. With one effortless push, the detective crashed onto the ground, while the mysterious figure walked past him, without even slowing down. The man slowly approached Youngmu's car. Then he looked down at the broken and trembling Youngmu, before quietly remarking how pathetic he looked. Now the moment Youngmu saw him, his entire expression twisted with desperation. Mr. Baver, his voice trembled as he tried speaking, but Baver calmly interrupted him and ordered him to follow, because they needed to talk privately. Meanwhile, Detective Park Yoon-han continued investigating the warehouse disaster. Looking around the burning scene, she remembered receiving reports that every Blue Bow dealer connected to the operation had suddenly been neutralized. At once she could not understand who possibly did all this. Worse still, the mind-altering candy officially approved by the Ministry of Health had already spread among countless students nationwide. She quietly muttered that everyone involved in this situation was completely insane. Then she noticed Detective Cha struggling to stand back up nearby. While holding his head in pain, Jungin immediately rushed toward him and asked whether he was alright. Through the pain, Detective Cha weakly told her to check the car. Immediately confused, Young-gon looked inside the vehicle. Then her eyes widened. The mysterious robed man was gone completely. There was no trace left behind elsewhere. Youngmu now knelt before Baver, hilted himself while desperately begging for another chance. He insisted that if he simply consumed more Blue Bow the next time, he could definitely kill Levis. Bava quietly asked whether Youngmu even understood how valuable those burned, devouring flowers truly were. According to him, he suffered immensely while gathering those flowers and cultivating loyal followers for years. That was exactly why pathetic humans should never have been trusted. In the first place, Youngmu continued begging, desperately promising he would destroy Levi's no matter what. But instead of answering, Beaver suddenly crushed one of the devouring flowers directly against Youngmu's face. A horrifying scream echoed immediately afterward. Youngmu collapsed onto the ground while clutching one eye in agony. Beaver coldly reminded him about the blood oath he swore earlier. If Youngmu truly wished to prove his loyalty one final time, then he should do so using the flower itself. Meanwhile, Jinji desperately searched through another hideout, while panicking internally. She kept repeating to herself that she just needed the crypto wallet. If she grabbed the money and escaped now, maybe she could still survive this nightmare. Suddenly a man stumbled into the room. He looked completely deranged. The moment Jinji saw the writing carved into his forehead, her face turned pale. The man screamed incoherently about candy and demanded more Blue Bow. Immediately his eyes moved in different directions, while black veins spread across his face. Jinji instantly realized the horrifying truth. This psycho consumed way too much Blue Bow. Terrified, she grabbed a nearby stick and demanded to know where he even came from. But before she could react properly, the addict punched her directly in the stomach and sent her crashing onto the floor, clutching her stomach in agony. Jinji watched in horror as the man arched his body unnaturally, while screaming for more Blue Bow. Then suddenly black mana burst from his face. A different voice echoed from inside him. The strange voice casually remarked that Lavis definitely would not like seeing this situation. Trembling in fear, Jinji begged the being to save her. But the voice simply sighed weakly and admitted that, unfortunately, he lacked the strength to help her personally. If she truly was destined for hell, then she should simply accept it already. Jinji stared in terror, casually answered that although she might die there, at least her body would remain behind in the human world afterward. Meanwhile, deep inside the demon realm, another conversation unfolded. A woman named Anus glared furiously at Varkan. After hearing about everything happening around Lavis, she demanded to know whether he completely lost his mind after sending Lavis into the human world. Did he seriously implant a demon bloodstone inside him too? Varkan calmly smiled. According to him, Lavis was already an adult now. Did she really think he would send the son of the great demon king away empty-handed? He simply hid the bloodstone carefully inside Lavis's human body. Acarnus exploded in rage immediately. Did he honestly want to announce to the entire universe that the son of the Demon King was alone and vulnerable inside the human world? Carefully asked whether perhaps it was finally time for her to trust Lavis more. But Achan angrily explained that the problem was not trust. She feared the instability of the current world itself. Right now, even the smallest crack between worlds could collapse everything. Completely, Varkin folded his arms confidently and declared that Lavis was much stronger than she believed. Before he could continue speaking proudly, Achan punched him directly in the head and screamed that strength was not the problem. Lacus was an idiot, that was the real danger. If even the slightest damage happened to Lavis's soul, then both of them would die together. Because of the Bloodstone's connection, Varkin yelled in pain and demanded why she still hit him. Despite them being adults already, he loudly ordered Bonbi to search through every magic book available, because he absolutely needed to discover a method for eliminating all annoying older sisters from existence forever. Hannes immediately grabbed him by the neck in fury, while Bambe quietly wondered how Lavis somehow survived growing up surrounded by lunatics like these. Meanwhile, back in the human world, Shihan finally sat quietly with Lavis and Street. After regaining consciousness earlier, still overwhelmed, he nervously admitted that Lavis truly was a demon after all. Lavis casually answered that humans indeed called his kind demons. Street happily nodded in agreement beside him. Then Shihan nervously asked something else. Now that he learned all these terrifying secrets, would he go to hell after dying? Lavis calmly answered that hell already existed, right there in the human world itself. Besides, if Shin simply followed him into the demon realm later, nobody would dare touch him there. After all, he served none other than Lavis Vindica, sole heir to the great Demon King. Shin instantly panicked and loudly refused. He absolutely did not want to visit some horrifying place like the demon realm. Lavis frowned slightly before muttering that once he returned home, the very first thing he planned to do was rip Bamba's eyes out and suck every liquid from them personally. Trying to change the subject, Shin suddenly asked what happened to the real Maiho. Streck quietly explained that Maiho was destined to die regardless. According to the laws of exile, demons could only occupy bodies already fated for death anyway. Shian's expression immediately darkened. Holding back tears, he quietly asked why Maiho deserved such a fate. Lavis looked genuinely confused by the sadness in Shian's voice. According to him, Maiho would still live for several more decades inside the demon realm. Afterward anyway. Eventually everyone met there. In the end, Peyton immediately realized the terrifying implication. So humans almost automatically ended up in the demon realm after death. Lavis casually replied that humans possessed way too much imagination regarding the place. According to him, the demon realm was actually extremely fun. Street enthusiastically agreed and happily described endless screams, torn human flesh, rivers of blood, and constant suffering filling their homeland. Achan quickly begged her to stop talking. Levi's casually assured him that death was still far away anyway, so there was no reason to worry yet. He simply ordered Shin to continue behaving normally around him and avoid speaking too much about demon-related matters. Shin nervously agreed. Then suddenly, Lavis groaned and grabbed his head, because his entire body started aching again. After overusing the demon bloodstone's power, eventually he finally returned home. The moment he stepped inside, Mina suddenly rushed toward him excitedly, while holding a cake with candles on top. "Happy birthday!" Lavis froze in confusion. "Birthday!" Mina happily explained that she and their mother spent all day preparing everything since yesterday. Although she admitted the cake's taste might not be perfect, she still proudly placed a party hat onto his head. Then she happily announced that their parents would arrive soon too. Before Lavis could react properly, Mina pulled out her phone and declared they absolutely needed a celebratory selfie first. That was when Lavis finally noticed the bandage covering her face. He asked what happened to her. Mina casually smiled and explained that some hooligans were harassing an elderly woman with a cart earlier, so she stepped in to help. According to her, it really was no big deal. Lavis silently stared at her. This weak, human girl knowingly risked getting hurt just to help someone else. To him, that behavior felt completely incomprehensible. Still smiling brightly, Mina handed him a spoonful of cake and told him he must be hungry. The moment the cake entered his mouth, Lavis's eyes widened in complete shock. The taste overwhelmed him instantly. He grabbed his own face, while silently savoring the unfamiliar sensation, with genuine happiness. Then suddenly, an enraged scream echoed from outside. John Tazik stormed into the house in fury, while screaming that he wanted the addresses of every idiot who threw eggs at him during the election campaign. According to him, he planned to kill every single one of them. His terrified assistant immediately agreed, but Tazik angrily punched him anyway, while screaming that useless trash like him should die first. SCO Jui desperately grabbed Tasik's arm and begged him to calm down. Tasik instantly struck her across the face and ordered her not to touch him. Mina immediately shouted at him to stop, because their mother did nothing wrong to seek. Finally noticed the birthday cake sitting on the table. His face darkened instantly. After being humiliated publicly during his campaign, his family was seriously sitting around eating cake, instead of worrying about him. Furious, he shoved Mina aside and screamed that they completely lost all fear and respect toward him. Then he violently knocked the birthday cake onto the floor. Seo Yokyung burst into tears, while begging him to stop because it was Miho's birthday today. But Tae-sik only shouted even louder that birthdays meant nothing in their current situation. Levi silently watched everything unfold. Then he slowly looked down at the ruined cake scattered across the floor. That cake belonged to him, and this arrogant human dared destroy it. Nearby, Seo Jui cried helplessly while apologizing to her children. Mina hugged her tightly while insisting none of this was her fault. Meanwhile, Levi's quietly stared toward Jang Tae-sik's back. And for the first time since arriving in the human world, he genuinely thought someone there was even more arrogant than himself. Later that night, Jang Tae-sik sat inside his office screaming furiously about Youngmoo. According to him, that idiot stopped sending money and completely disappeared without contact. Tae-sik slammed his fist against the desk, while yelling that even arranging a single photo with Deputy Park required advance payments nowadays. He cursed Youngmoo repeatedly and called him a completely useless bastard. One of his assistants nervously promised they were doing everything possible to locate Youngmoo, but Tae-sik only became angrier. He complained that he already hated lowering himself to cooperate with trash like Youngmoo just for election ratings. Yet somehow those idiots still managed to fail him. Suddenly another assistant burst into the office in panic. "Sir, Mina's video is exploding online right now." Tassie immediately looked confused and demanded to know what video they were talking about. The assistant quickly handed him a tablet. On the screen, Mina stood protectively in front of an elderly woman. While confronting several rude young men, one of the boys grabbed Mina's cheek aggressively, while shouting at her to mind her own business. But Mina instantly slapped his hand away and yelled back at them, "How dare you mock an old grandmother and act proud about it?" The young men called her crazy and screamed that everyone should get out of there already. But instead of backing away, Mina calmly approached the frightened old woman and gently asked whether she was alright. Watching the video, Tae-sik blinked in surprise. His assistant quickly explained that if the public discovered Mina was his daughter, his support ratings would rise dramatically. According to him, the reaction online was overwhelmingly positive. People were calling Mina brave, kind, and heroic. A slow grin spread across Tae-sik's face. So the situation was actually turning out rather well for him. Meanwhile, inside a luxurious room, several mysterious women quietly watched Mina's video too. One woman slowly smiled while saying that such a beautiful face had been hidden away surprisingly well. Another woman, named Hansu, asked for Mina to be brought to them eventually, because she looked extremely interesting. Then someone else calmly declared that Mina would become their mother's next vessel. Hansu quietly observed Mina's face on the screen, while another woman, named Yeonju, explained that human bodies aged too quickly. Eventually they became ugly, wrinkled, and weak, but Mina possessed exactly the kind of beautiful vessel they had been searching for all along, according to Yeonju. It was destiny. Hansu continued staring silently at Mina's image, before quietly wondering what kind of sound such a beautiful doll would make if someone broke it. Soon afterward, every news channel in the country began reporting about the courageous high school girl who saved an elderly woman from hooligans. Once reporters discovered Mina was the daughter of mayoral candidate Jang Tae-sik, public interest exploded even further. Tassie's assistants excitedly informed him that, according to the newest surveys, he had already reclaimed first place in the election rankings. Overnight, at this rate, victory was practically guaranteed. Even better, tonight's major news broadcast planned to air Mina's video nationwide. At 9 o'clock, Tassie laughed in satisfaction. Who would have imagined that his daughter's reckless behavior would bring him such incredible luck? Immediately, he began planning ways to exploit the situation further. He ordered his staff to organize charity events, volunteer programs, and every possible public activity under Mina's name to maximize attention and improve his image. Then one assistant suddenly mentioned something else. The director of the giant Knox Corporation, Han Yeonju herself, personally contacted them after seeing Mina's video to seek froze. Briefly, Knox, one of the most powerful companies in the country. At that moment, even Tassie started thinking Mina might truly be a treasure after all. Meanwhile, Shishin quietly admitted to Lavis that he honestly never knew Minhee's stepfather was a mayoral candidate until recently. Lavis asked whether Shishan understood Minhee's family situation well. Shoshin explained that Minhee rarely spoke openly about home life, but he always seemed especially close to Mina. According to Shoshin, Minheo treasured his sister deeply. Levi slowly raised his head after hearing those words, treasured. The word reminded him of advice Varkin once gave him long ago. According to his uncle, powerful beings must carefully protect the things necessary for maintaining their own strength. Lavis quietly remembered how noisy and irritating Varkin always was. Then suddenly Lavis noticed movement nearby. Street was once again awkwardly squeezing herself halfway through a crack in the wall. Lavis immediately asked why she was stuck again. Embarrassed, Street admitted she might have eaten slightly too much lately. Lavis sighed and wondered whether every entrance, connecting the human world and demon realm, was this ridiculously narrow. Then he asked whether Band said anything important. Street quickly handed him a small note. While explaining that Band himself was not there anymore, Levis unfolded the message and immediately frowned. The note cheerfully congratulated him for his good work so far, and suggested that perhaps he might catch Beaver too, if he kept going. The moment Lavis finished reading, he instantly tore the paper into tiny pieces, and screamed furiously that Banbai was clearly trying to use him again. According to Lavis, he planned to kill Banbai long before dealing with Beaver. Street nervously begged him to calm down, while Shan quietly checked the newest election updates on his phone. The screen now showed John Tasic leading the mayoral race completely. John quietly admitted that public opinion had shifted entirely in Tasic's favor. Now at this rate he really might become mayor. Levi's looked toward the city skyline thoughtfully. Would someone like John Tasic truly swallow an entire city with his greed? John awkwardly explained that Tasic probably would not literally swallow the city, but he definitely intended to completely control it. Hearing that caused Levi's to think of a certain species of demon. He quietly remarked that Tasic's greed strongly resembled a Serenus demon. Confused, Shan asked what exactly that meant. Street immediately explained enthusiastically that Serenuses were gluttonous demons from the demon realm, who constantly devoured everything around them endlessly. Even other demons hated them because their hunger never stopped. Then Street awkwardly pointed out that one of those demons currently ruled this entire district, in the demon realm still. According to her, John Tasic was definitely just a human. Lavis narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Anyway, if a human like that truly became ruler of the city, then perhaps the human world itself had already become rotten too. Then Lavis glanced toward Street and bluntly warned her to stop overeating as well before she turned into a Kanara herself. Street immediately teared up and subtly promised she would eat less from now on. Meanwhile, Shai Han quietly admitted something else he really did not like: how Tasic seemed ready to exploit Mina for political gain. Now hearing that, Levis silently thought about Zhang Minho and Zhang Mina together. After some time, Levis returned home and immediately heard voices coming from the living room. Seo Jui nervously asked what would happen to Mina now. Sitting across from her, Han Youngyo calmly answered that Mina possessed outstanding beauty and natural talent. According to her, after mastering the basics of dance, Mina could debut very quickly and might even become the center of an idol group. Seko Yuhi hesitated before quietly saying that Mina was still just a high school student. Besides, Mina never once said she wanted to become a celebrity. John Tasic immediately interrupted her with an irritated smile. He told his wife not to say such embarrassing things in front of the agency director. According to him, hiding Mina's natural talent would be a complete waste. Then he apologized to Han Youngyo and awkwardly explained that his wife was simply too timid. At that moment, Lava stepped into the room. Asioyo he immediately looked toward him, while Han Youngyo warmly smiled and assured her not to worry. According to her, Nox agency would fully support Mina's education. Alongside her idol activities, modern idols were different from the old generation. Now, they could become celebrities while still entering top universities. Successfully, Lavis quietly observed everyone in the room. Then his eyes shifted toward Hansu, who had been silently staring at Mina the entire time with an unnerving gaze. Levi immediately wondered what kind of person he really was. Meanwhile, Tachik excitedly opened a folder and asked whether all they needed now was Mina's signature on the contract. Han Youngyu smiled calmly and explained that the document before them would illuminate Mina's future. It was an official contract with Nox agency. The moment those words were spoken, Mina noticeably stiffened. She kept her head lowered silently. Han Yanjin then noticed Lavis standing nearby and politely asked whether he was Mina's older brother. She introduced herself formally as the representative director of Nox agency. Han Yanjin Lavis simply stared at her silently without answering. Tasic immediately shouted at him in annoyance and demanded that Zhang Minho greet people properly. But Han Youngyu simply laughed softly and said, "Kids these days were all like that anyway." Lavis remained silent inside his mind. He remembered Shin saying earlier that Minho treasured Mina deeply. Then suddenly another memory surfaced. Long ago in the demon realm, Farkan once told him something important. According to his uncle, the world was filled with enemies constantly seeking the ruler's power. As the heir to the great demon king, Damadera Vindica, Lavis carried enormous responsibility. That was exactly why he needed to learn how to gather people around him at the time. Lavis complained that he could handle everything perfectly fine alone. Farkan only laughed loudly and declared that one day, Lavis would eventually meet people his heart reached toward. Naturally, when that happened, he would slowly change without even realizing it himself. Back then, Lavis dismissed the entire conversation and suggested training instead, because he hated emotional discussions like that. Farkan only laughed harder and proudly declared that Lavis truly resembled him. Returning to the present, Lavis suddenly placed a hand on Tamina's shoulder. The room immediately became quiet. Looking directly at her, he asked whether she truly wanted this herself. Mina slowly raised her head in surprise. Brother Levi's calmly told her that, if she was forcing herself for someone else's sake, then she should simply say so. If there was a problem, he would deal with it personally. Hearing those words caused Mina's eyes to tremble slightly. Then memories from her childhood resurfaced inside her mind. She remembered John Tosic violently grabbing Seo Jui by the hair, while screaming that she would never take the children away from him. According to him, the children belonged to his family register now. Even if Seo Jui left, she would never survive financially without him. Seojin begged him to let them go peacefully. Tasic only mocked her harder. Then Mina remembered herself stepping forward courageously, and shouting that they still possessed the inheritance, left behind by their grandfather. Tasic immediately snapped at her, claiming she spoke nonsense, exactly like her mother. Then he squeezed Seo Jui's face painfully, while teaching Mina what he considered the most important rule for surviving in life. Never let go of what belonged to you. Returning to the present again, Mina finally answered yes. She truly wanted to do this. However, she had one condition. If she earned money through this contract, then every bit of it must belong directly to her personally. Inside her heart, Mina silently made a promise. One day she would free her mother and brother from this devil, called John Tosic, no matter what happened. Tosic looked briefly surprised, before immediately laughing and pretending her condition was obvious. Anyway, Han Young-yu smiled calmly, and suggested they finalize the contract right away. Then Tosic enthusiastically thanked the director, and declared that Mina meant more to him than his own life. Seo he nervously asked Mina one last time whether she truly felt certain about all this. Mina smiled gently at her mother. She asked her simply to trust her. Then she quietly thanked Lavis for worrying about her. Lavis looked at her silently, without replying. Later that night, Han Yeonru and Han Su sat together inside a luxurious car. While discussing Mina, Han Yeonru slowly smiled while saying the more she observed Mina, the more perfect she appeared. Her beauty, innocence, gaze, and overall appearance were exactly what she had been searching for. Hansu remained quiet briefly before mentioning something else instead. There was something unusual about Mina's brother. Han Youngju asked what he meant. Hansu answered that Minho possessed a strange aura that did not feel human at all. Hearing that caused Han Youngju to chuckle. Softly she jokingly asked whether Hansu believed Minho might actually be some follower from the demon realm. Hansu seriously suggested killing him immediately, if he really was dangerous, but Han Youngju calmly rejected the idea. According to her, reckless actions right now could create huge complications. The important thing currently was Minnie. They simply needed to continue observing quietly for now. Suddenly Hansu grabbed his head violently, while screaming that just looking at Minho made him want to tear him apart. Han Youngyo gently comforted him, and promised that patience was necessary. The moonless night would arrive soon enough. Once the ritual was completed and Mina became hers completely, then Han Yo could do whatever he wanted with Jong Minho afterward. Hei Hansu immediately looked excited, and asked whether she truly promised him that. At Han Youngru smiled warmly. Of course it was a gift from his mother. Then suddenly Hansu quietly spoke another name, Mara. The instant Han Youngru heard that word, her expression froze completely. She immediately ordered him never to say that name again. Mara no longer existed, now she was Han Yanjin. And soon she would be reborn once more as Jong Mina. Her eyes slowly darkened with obsession, as she declared that neither the Great Demon King, nor the 12 Black Thrones would stop her this time. No matter what happened.